Hi, welcome back to my channel. My name is Kayla and I like to talk about books, book reviews, things like that. So if any of that interests you, then definitely subscribe. But today I'm specifically going to be talking about a new release by Ashley Flowers called All Good People Here. So if you want to talk about this book, if you're interested in reading this book, then let's go ahead and talk about it. So before I get into the full review and everything, I just want to say that this will be a spoiler-free synopsis, and I'm gonna just try and give kind of the bare bones description of what the book is about. I'll go into my review, and my review will also be spoiler-free, but I will have a small section at the end. I will give ample warning, but I will probably want to talk about the ending a little bit in detail. So I'll probably talk about it vaguely, and then I'll talk about it in more detail. But again, I will give ample warning for that, and I will also leave timestamps down below, so if you want to skip ahead, just do the review, anything like that, skip it to spoilers, or avoid the spoilers, then it'll be really easy and clear cut to do that. Also, apologize, I'm hearing some noises, but I don't think that they're probably very loud for you, but there's somebody doing something with yard work outside, but that's okay. So All Good People Here by Ashley Flowers is a new release that I believe is this author's first book, and I'm not a fan of her. I didn't really know that much about her until after I read it. I kind of looked up a little bit about her, and apparently she has had a true crime podcast for a while that I think is quite popular, which explains why this would be her debut. And I think it also explains a little bit about the book, the structure of the book, the experience of it. I feel like that context is probably important to have. So yeah, let me just give a little bit of a description. The book follows Margot, who is a struggling journalist who has been obsessed with the murder of her childhood best friend, January Jacobs. So her best friend, January Jacobs, was abducted and killed when they were both 6 years old. And this has obviously kind of haunted her because they were also neighbors, and in her mind she thought it could have just as easily been me. So she's dealt with a lot of really conflicted feelings about this over the years, but growing up to be a journalist, she now covers a lot of stories about disappearances, missing girls, stuff like this. And obviously this has shaped a lot about why she does what she does, how she does it, all of that. But when another girl is kidnapped and murdered near her small hometown, she actually begins work on a piece possibly linking the two crimes. Even though there's about 2 decades in between them, she has just a little bit of a feeling that there could be similarities, there could be a link between these two. This just leads her further and further down the path of kind of discovering what exactly happened to her friend January all those years ago, and the hope that Margot can finally get some sort of closure or justice, or just even potentially solve the unsolved case. So the book kind of begins with her returning to her hometown to care for actually her ailing Uncle Luke, who she's been very close with her entire life, and he has dementia now, and so he is kind of obviously just has days where he seems perfectly fine and then days where he's really out of it, which is also another struggle. It adds a good layer to the story, I think. Anyway, so as she's taking care of her uncle, she finds this proximity kind of the perfect opportunity to really dig into the case of January Jacobs, as well as this other little girl, Natalie. And the more she digs and digs around, the more complicated things become, obviously. And she actually even ends up receiving these kind of threatening warnings that she should stop pursuing the truth and what happened. And it's a pretty interesting read because it does shift a little bit as you're reading it. That's all I'll give for the synopsis, because like I said, I really don't want to give any spoilers away until the very end, but I'll get right into the review. So kind of building off of what I was about to say with the synopsis is that something I did really like about this book from the perspective of a thriller, a thriller, it's a true crime kind of thriller, and then obviously mystery because you want to know what happened. But I think something from the kind of thriller mystery perspective that I did really appreciate was that she explores a lot of the different routes that other people around thought, or like she explores a few different routes of what you think happened. It's hard to exactly articulate, but I really like that because it kind of reminds me of what happens with actual true crime cases that are unsolved, which is that there's obviously a lot of speculation, there's a lot of potential explanations, and so this kind of goes through them. The story reminded me a lot of the JonBenet Ramsey case, which I think basically everybody who lives in the US and even probably broader kind of knows about, but if not, you can always Google it. It was definitely clearly inspired, at least partially, by this case, and I do think it ended up evolving throughout the story to be kind of its own thing. So it's not completely cut and dry about that, but it seems like it probably evolved from a place of maybe her own personal speculations about what happened in that case, or a bunch of really popular speculations about what happened in that case. Like I said, I think it evolves enough to be its own thing, its own story, its own plot, but that's just like the first thing that I remember really clearly thinking regarding this story. Going into more just like how the book was structured, I actually really liked the format of this book. I liked it because it switched between Chrissy, the mother of January Jacobs, in 1994, so back when she went missing and her body was found, and then it also goes back to Margot, as I said, January's childhood best friend and kind of like her protagonist, and Margot in the almost modern day. It's in 2019, so kind of pre-pandemic modern day. And in my opinion, having these two viewpoints and these two time periods, sorry, the air just went on. Anyway, in my opinion, having these two time points and these two viewpoints and these two time periods creates a way more dynamic structure for the story. I think it would have been a lot less interesting to read if it were just one of these viewpoints, or if it was just Margot's, which was probably the way that you would go. Yeah, I think it makes the past parts of the story feel a lot more alive. So I think it was really great that the viewpoint of Chrissy was added in. It made it more dynamic, it made it more emotional, and it does follow her. It's mostly in 1994, her viewpoint, but it does follow her a little bit further along as well. And again, I just think that that makes the past feel really alive in this book, and it makes the other timeline just really have a little bit more depth and more emotion to it. Something that I personally appreciated in this was the pacing. She gets you pretty quickly to be interested, but then after that, the pacing is pretty steady. It allowed the story to unfold in what I thought was a pretty measured way. It was not usually too much at once, but always enough to kind of keep at least me interested as the reader and keep me wanting to know more. Like, I definitely wanted to know what was going to happen in the end. I was interested in a resolution to the case as well, like solving the case. I'll kind of move on to the characters a little bit. This is the part where I did like it, but I also started to see maybe just a little bit of, I don't know, I thought that some of the characters could have had a better arc, maybe a little bit more development. Specifically Margot, she has a little bit of development and self-awareness regarding like her focus on January's case, but it seems just like, again, without wanting to give too much away, I do feel like her character could have had a little bit more of an arc. It just reminds me as a reader that this is less of a character-driven story and more of a story-driven story. It's more of a thrill. But I do think some of the like secondary characters were pretty interesting. Some of like the less prominent characters, and I do think it, again, like I said, it was really great to include Chrissy's viewpoints. I thought Chrissy was a pretty interesting character, but I'll just leave it at that. I think some of the secondary characters had compelling stories. I'll say that. They had compelling stories woven in. January's brother, Uncle Luke, but like I said, Margot felt a little bit lacking to me. If you love a character-driven story, this might not be your favorite. Okay, so here's the part where I just want to say that this story absolutely broke me in the end. I thought that it was well crafted in the sense that it took a lot of turns with where you thought the story was going to go, but it was never anything too drastic or too unbelievable. It was still within the realm of possibility. It felt like it was nothing too crazy or too out there. Without giving anything away, I just like want to tell people to not read the epilogue. It's unnecessary. It's just best to skip it. It adds a lot of unnecessary details regarding the crime that don't actually like give you any more insight into like a resolution, but it just added a lot of unnecessary like gritty emotional details that I feel like I did not want to know. I feel like it was something that was pretty upsetting for me personally. I am a mom of a little girl, so I didn't like that part. Here's the part where I'll maybe add in that I'm going to be discussing some spoilers. So I'm just going to discuss the ending in a little bit more detail, and I will be discussing spoilers. Like I said, if you have not read this, you don't want it spoiled, please stop watching at this point, click off, spoilers ahead. So building off of kind of what I said about the epilogue, if you've read it, then you probably know what I'm talking about. Like I said, I'm spoiling right now that it was actually in the end January's dad, or not quite dad, who killed her. Like I said, there were a lot of twists. So there was a paternity twist, which is that January's dad was not really her dad. Then there was also kind of the twist that he was the one who killed her, but it was sort of accidental-ish, kind of turned into on purpose. And it was, having that knowledge about it was still upsetting, but having it described in so much detail in the epilogue was so unnecessary, and it honestly broke me. It's like something I've been thinking about for a few days, and it's been really troubling for me. Like, it was just a really, really troubling ending, and it didn't have any resolution. And it's fine for something to have an open-ended ending. Like, I actually like that. I didn't mind it the way it ended before the epilogue. It didn't tell me anything about really what happened to Margot. I mean, I like that that's up to interpretation, kind of. I have my own interpretation. It's dark. It's all very dark for me. It's all just like negative. But yeah, that ending really, really broke me. I was like really upset. I cried for like 5 minutes just like in the dark afterwards, because I was like, my little girl was sleeping right next to me too, so I was like ooh, I shouldn't have read this at this time. It kind of put a little bit of a damper on the rest of the book for me, which, like I said, I liked a lot of the other twists and turns. It was maybe like one twist too many, but they were all within the realm of possibility and believability, especially if you've ever lived and been in that type of a small town atmosphere. You know that like that stuff actually is like pretty rampant. Like, I feel like a paternity twist of like, oh, the father is not who you thought it was for the twins, that makes sense to me, and it's an acceptable twist because it really is within the realm of possibility. And a lot of the other ones were kind of just like, you're solving the case with Margot in a way, so you're going down kind of like not false paths, but like when she thought it was Jace and we thought it was, and then because that's what Chrissy thought too. And then I liked all of the unraveling of like, you thought it was this person and then you kind of thought it was this person, and you're just really poking around for motives and the truth, and I liked that because it really felt like solving a crime, solving a mystery. Yeah, I don't know. I don't have a lot else to say about it except that that ending just, it broke me. I'm way too emotional to be reading something like that right now. So probably a change of pace for a couple reads. But anyway, that's basically it for my review. Let me know below if you've read this, if you are interested in reading this. Hopefully you skipped the spoiler section if you are interested in reading this and you haven't. But anyway, yeah, just like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. Let me know your thoughts, and I will see you later.